everybody. Welcome. We are the three girls as usual here. And We're doing kind of a special episode today to do another three girls, one controversial topic. And the last time, I just want to say that we did a three girls, one controversial topic. We pre-recorded it. And so this is our first time ever attempting one of these live. So we're all a little nervous, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, 'cause in the beginning, we're like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's not, and then
it's not that controversial.
But then between that time and now, like conversations, very heated conversations have happened. And
yeah, exactly.
Opinions have got stronger, I think.
All of a sudden it's like Facebook fights and lawsuits and like, oh my God, everybody is like freaking out. And we were all of a sudden we were like, oh, this is actually like legitimately controversial, not just like our little silly joke controversial.
Exactly.
This is real controversial.
Yes. And we still decide to keep it live because we know that our peeps here in the Three Girls community can keep it courteous and respectful and adult.
Exactly.
So
we don't have to agree. I think, like we all know, we don't have to agree with each other. That's kind of what we've built Three Girls around.
Exactly.
We don't have to agree with each other, but we do have to respect each other.
Exactly. Yes. The three of us agree on like very little in a lot of cases. So it always ends up being totally fine. So we're hoping the comments will be the same too. And we've got a lot of folks on already. We've got Lisa. Hi, Lisa. We've got Laura from Upper Marine Teen.
Tracy
Funny Lady, Ana Luisa, Early Ritual. So we've got a ton of people. This is fantastic.
Hello.
So welcome everybody. Glad you are all here. So Julie kind of made our list of questions to I'm just like handing it off to Julie, like
well,
you made the list of questions.
Fair enough.
You made the list of questions and now I'm like putting even more on you by making you like
making me go first again per
Sorry. Hey, Auntie Clay.
Okay,
let's talk AI art.
Yes, let's talk AI art. First of all, I think we should all be on the same page as to what AI actually means, and so because I think maybe some of us have a different shade of the same understanding, etc. But it just generally, let's define what AI means. So, and I looked this up, just to make sure that I am indeed like thinking on the right track, because could very well be that I have I am no AI expert. Let's just put it that way. So basically AI is when you have like technology or kind of computers and machine learning, like tech that is basically being used to function in ways that would normally require human intelligence, right? So anything tech-wise that could be used to make decisions that a human would, you would normally need like human intelligence and analyses to make, decision-making, prediction, etc. So that is essentially my understanding and what I've seen, just kind of Googling what the general definition of AI is. So do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I guess, the only thing that I would add is that I think that it is important to note that, while AI, and especially the types of AI art programs that we're talking about here are designed to function, semi-independently in terms of creating things, it obviously has to learn from somewhere. Like there is this machine learning component of AI where, you have to train an algorithm basically. And the way that in which that algorithm is trained is by that algorithm being fed, certain sets of
data
exactly that was actually created by people, and learning to draw connections and make connections between certain words, certain images. Like overall, there's this learning component to it that is very important. It can't just sort of like function on its own. Like we're not talking about Skynet here. Like it's
not yet. No, I'm just kidding. But exactly.
I think Layla makes a very good point as well. Is that it can't learn to do anything that it's not programmed to do.
Exactly. So essentially it does require data. It does require, a set of constant like fed data to then be learning to then make those decisions and make those predictions, create those outcomes and results. So essentially, and that is where we get into some of the AI art generators and programs that we've been seeing with like Midjourney and I don't know what else. I'm not in the know, but essentially they are taking, they are taking existing data, which would mean existing pieces of art.
Exactly.
And then, creating a different image or whatever, and then I guess the other component is that the person is putting in different prompts and such, and then creating the image based on the different prompts that it's putting in,
right?
And then what that program has learned via the different connections between these words and data, and then the whole idea is that the person can continue to refine. So I think it's especially with these decks being created, I think there might be this idea that you just spit a couple words in there and boom, there's your image. Let's throw it on a card. But I think it's actually more complicated than that. There is more there that the person is having to do to create that image. So, okay.
Yeah. And we got a couple more folks on, so just want to say hi. We got Beth,
hi,
we got Meg Rose, Honey Ridgewell, we got Mix Chris Ray. So hello everybody.
Hello.
And we got a really, really good point from Auntie K talking about, the fact that AI learns from what humans have already created means that it doesn't exist in neutrality. Like it is shaped by and is learning from specific human actions, human behaviors, artworks that have already been created in the case of AI art. And so none of that's happening in a vacuum. All of that's happening within a context, within a societal context that is going to inevitably influence what your output looks like. So
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So what else do we have here in terms of comments? So in a sense, it learns from both programmers and developers employed by the software companies and the human artists whose art is non-consensually input into. Exactly.
Correct. Yeah. So it is interesting. And
it is very interesting. Yeah. I mean, and just AI in general, I mean, it's nothing new. It's been around for years and years. We use it in our everyday lives, a lot of times without even thinking that it's AI or knowing that it's AI. And so it's not new. It's not new, but we are seeing it as a thing that's taken more precedence of conversation in especially the tarot community with the creation of some AI decks that we've been seeing. Okay, so why don't we, let's talk about, say, some of the advantages there could very well be or benefits to AI being a source of creation for, let's keep it to, decks, because that's what we know. So in terms of decks, what are your thoughts about that? Any, advantages, benefits? For my part, I just feel like, I think in a way it can combat ableism to an extent, because, there are certain person with maybe say disabilities that aren't able to say create traditionally, as we would say. And so AI could be an avenue for people who might not necessarily have the physical capabilities of those skills, or maybe haven't been trained. And this is a creative way for them to, this is an avenue for them to explore if the software is ethically sourced and such.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just like watching. There's already some like really, really good comments. Like, Lisa, it's possible to be made with very little effort or lots of effort.
Yeah.
Beth talking about copyright laws, which yes, we will
get into that.
So yeah, there's a lot of, anti-K, plenty of theft takes lots of effort. I mean, so definitely there is a lot to unpack there. So, and I do think, I think it's fair what you're saying, Julie, about the sort of concept of, in a way, democratizing the process of art creation in terms of removing some of the barriers that involve, certain skills and training that you might need to have, certain physical abilities that you might need to have, and so on and so forth. And again, and I just want to make sure that everybody's understanding that in talking about this end of it, like the question of whether or not the ability of the AI engine to do what it does is ethically sourced is all like implicit in that. Like there's
exactly.
We're kind of we haven't addressed that yet. But
we also want to keep it a balanced conversation. So instead of shitting all over AI, we want to just kind of explore benefits and pros and cons, just to get different perspectives, because there's certainly a camp that thinks that AI decks are fine, and then there's the camp that, decks, I've seen it in tarot, I've seen it in the coloring book industry, I have seen it in the children's book and storybook industry, where it's like hashtag no AI art, say no to AI art, so it's very there are definitely some two camps there.
So this is also a good point from Lisa. It can become a raw material of sorts that people can use to mold or create from. Lots of comparisons to collage exactly. Artists who use reference images, etc. So yeah, I think that that's definitely a consideration. And I think that once you get into talking about the whole question of copyright and the role of an existing artist, and the fact that the AI engine has learned from an existing artist, there is a comparison to be made there, for something like, for example, collage art, or like not all art created by non-AI it is not making use of works of other artists. In fact, pretty much all of it is, in the way that our AI learns from other artists. I can go to a museum and learn from other artists and then create artwork in their style. So it's not just limited to AI, this whole concept of usage of other artists' styles or concepts or things like that, that isn't something that only happens with AI. And that is relevant to the copyright discussion, but the ethical discussion around this might be a bit different, and we'll get there. So anyway, we're not letting Heather talk at all.
No, it's fine. I am fine. I am listening. I don't know what we're talking about. No.
We're doing.
Like, I do agree. I think that Laura Aquamarine 18 had a good point, that yes, people have had access, to other ways of creating art. But this is, I think, in terms of a pro, it's just one more way that people can be creative in ways that might not have been available to them before. Maybe people aren't creative in a way that, and I'm not just talking about disabilities, I'm just talking about in general.
In general, exactly.
Maybe people aren't just very good at making things with their hands. Maybe they don't have the skill that it takes to draw or create pottery or do things digitally. And this is just a way for people to express their creativity in a different way.
Absolutely. Yes.
So yeah, we've got another good point from Auntie K here. Are barriers removed if it still has problems of racism and bigotry? Does that not just entrench more barriers we are more comfortable with? And sure, that's an excellent point. And that's been just a huge, huge topic in the whole question of AI in general, I mean, when you think about things like this has even come up in terms of facial recognition software and things like that, like AI, because of, again, it's not created in a vacuum, it's created in a context. So the people who have built AI there's been issues with like facial recognition software not being able to recognize Black people, there's been issues, like there's a lot of, so one thing that is really interesting is when I was a lawyer, one of the things that I worked on, both on the law side, but also on the technology side, and what I did after I stopped practicing, was working on AI engines for doing document review in lawsuits. And there are so many different tools, but one of them is something like there's a tool to detect pornography that uses skin analysis, like the amount of skin in a photograph, right, displayed, is used to sort of algorithmically find pornography in like large banks of images. But again, like, how does it decide what skin looks like? Like there's none of this is created in a vacuum. And so there's so many potential issues that are raised just by the mere fact that human programmers are creating all these things. So anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, we've got lots of more comments. So yeah, we've got early ritual art is based on previous artists, even if it is the antithesis of someone's style. Sometimes it's the response of the prior generation's art. That's growth.
And that's an interesting thing that I was thinking about when I was trying to understand how AI art works. So I was reading articles about how AI art works, and that idea that, and I know it's more complicated than this. I am breaking this down so I can understand it, because I don't know anything about art or AI, but this idea that it is looking at other artwork and then replicating a piece of art using the things that it's learned from that other artwork. Is that not what all artists do to some degree or another? Is that if you go to university and you study art, not art history, but art, do you not study the works of other artists in order to get to a point where you're creating your own art? Again, I'm not an artist. I've never been to university for art, but on some level, is it not doing what artists are doing? And then in which case, and I know it's more complicated than that. And there's, there's stuff around the ethics of taking other people's work without, giving credit and those kind of things. But on a basic level, before we get into that kind of stuff, isn't that what art is? It's building on what is already there and creating something original, which is what AI art is supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. Which is such a really good point. And I think that is where we start to, and I'm like just flying way ahead of Julie's question list, but I think this is where we start to get into these questions of, if AI art is in a lot of ways mostly a computer doing what a lot of human artists to some extent do in a similar way, how are we going to try to separate out the legalities of that from the ethics of that? Because I think about the fact, for example, like a bunch of artists just sued Midjourney for having scraped a whole bunch of their images and using those images without those artists' permission to create artwork in similar styles to those artists' styles. Which is a really interesting question from an intellectual property standpoint, because from the standpoint of current definitions around copyright, that's probably not a copyright violation, right? Like, in all likelihood, that's probably, like, I think that those artists have a very, very legitimate grievance. I think they're probably not going to win their lawsuit. Is my personal opinion on the subject. Just from the standards of current copyright law. That said, it raises this interesting question about the ethics of the whole thing, right? Like, I think that our problem with AI art maybe isn't so much of like an intellectual property question around theft of artwork, because fundamentally what AI is doing, again, it isn't all that different from what a human artist does.
Exactly.
But the sort of economic incentives that are underlying AI art are where we really get uneasy, because what it makes possible is the ability to create art in a certain artist style without paying that artist, right? Like it's those kind of societal implications around the ability to do that that are what make us uneasy about it.
Yeah.
Because when you actually sit down and think about specifically, if an AI engine looks at a piece of artwork on the internet, how is that different from me looking at a piece of artwork on the internet? If I'm not exactly replicating it, if I'm not if I'm creating my own artwork based on somebody else's style, that's not an intellectual property violation. But if I'm a big corporation doing that so that the artist now then doesn't need to be paid for their work because the computer can do it for them, that's, I think, where we get really uneasy about it. So anyway, it's
for sure. And that's where it's always a gray area for me in terms of intellectual property issues, and what's because I did do some I'm not a lawyer, but when I did work in online curriculum, we had to deal with copyright and fair use versus public domain versus, and it's so confusing, and there are a lot of gray areas and loopholes and kind of almost arguments that you could make for why it's okay. No, it's totally fine. And so a lot of that just goes over my head even now. And so that can be very confusing and just complicated for sure.
I'm sorry, I'm scrolling back because I think while I was talking, I missed a whole bunch of discussion.
No, we got a lot of great comments.
Yeah, we got a great comment. What are these companies using this tech for? Where does the base code come from? Military applications. These kinds of issues don't arise with me collaging from an old picture book. And yes, absolutely. I think that that's the real issue here. I think it has more to do with again, the context. It's, from an intellectual property standpoint, maybe it isn't really theft. And again, I'm talking from a strictly legal intellectual property standpoint. It's probably not illegal, but again, what does it mean for society that we have the ability to do this now? I think that becomes the real question. And the sort of perverse incentives of capitalism. I keep seeing people, bringing up tweets where people are saying things like, isn't it interesting that we all thought that robots would free us from all of the drudgery of manual labor and, doing things that are hard on our bodies and, and backbreaking and uncreative because, now we're freed up by robots to, spend all of our time doing the creative things that only humans can do. And instead tech companies are like, actually, let's build robots that do all of the creative stuff. And then the rest of us can keep, doing all the other, doing the stuff that it's just I don't know.
Yeah.
It's sort of perverse to me that nobody's spending money building strawberry picking robots, even though picking strawberries is a very hard and difficult and dangerous and chemical exposure laden job, because there's no economic incentive, because we already have an exploited class of laborers, human laborers, who can do that very cheaply.
Right.
But there is an economic incentive to build AI so that we don't have to pay artists anymore. It's just, I don't know. It's but again, none of that has anything to do with copyright law, which is why lawsuit is just
absolutely. And I think that's what makes it, that's one of the things that makes it so controversial that I was thinking about, just in terms of the economical implications and the fact that a lot of people are truly afraid that, okay, well, so then am I going to eventually lose my job here? Is it going to be to the point where AI is going to be able to do my work for me and I'm out of a job? And all these people are out of a job, all these creatives and other types of, I mean, it's even come up in the editing profession, are we going to be out of jobs? Because
I think that's a really valid thing for people to be concerned about when it comes to things like AI, because from a capitalist society standpoint, if you can buy an AI program for a set amount of money that will create all of the graphics and the art that you need for your company for the rest of time, or you have to pay a commission for every piece of work that you're a graphic designer or whatever, from a business standpoint, of course, it's going to make more sense to spend out one amount of money instead of employing all of these different experts in their role. And that is a really legitimate concern when you're talking about things like AI are, and the AI that is now writing magazine articles, are we going to newspaper stories, that it's a legitimate threat to journalists and authors, and these things are real conversations that have to happen and have to. And I was just watching some of the stuff about the legal stuff as well, and it's not, and Sarah, you'll know more about this than I do, but our legal system is not prepared for this kind of stuff. It was exactly the same as the internet became more pervasive and we were all doing more things online, and we started to live in a cyber world. The legal system can't keep up with how much things are changing technology wise, and maybe the laws don't exist now, but they will exist in a few years' time when the system catches up. I don't know where I was going with that. I had a point, and then
I mean, that's
I think that is very much. Yeah,
exactly. That I think is why the lawsuit against Midjourney to me is so interesting, because our intellectual property law framework is not built to handle this issue. It's there. We just don't have the definitions and considerations in place in that, area of jurisprudence to handle this concept of, a computer is making artwork that's in my style, and in order to do that, it looked at my artwork, but it's not actually my artwork. Like that, we don't have the definitions around those kinds of things in the law. And this is just a great example of how the legal system is truly terrible sometimes at being able to handle like ethical questions or questions of like the overall societal impact of something like this. It's not built for that. So
and it's so multi-layered, whereas it's just not black and white, right? So that just makes it all the more difficult to really, I think, handle in a legal way. Because you have to have these these base definitions, right, of what copyright infringement is, et cetera, but when it comes to like this issue of AI art and the exact examples that we've been discussing in scenarios, it's like, how would you make a legal, a legal call on that type of scenario, Anyway. So
well, and I think it's interesting too, because generally speaking, in the world of copyright, copyright protects a specific expression of an artwork, right? Like if I make a drawing, copyright protects my drawing.
Yes.
It doesn't protect somebody else looking at my drawing and drawing their own copy of my drawing. It doesn't protect, like copyright law is very limited actually in terms of what it protects. And then there's a whole bunch of exceptions as well, around fair use. Is the use transformative? Is the use for purposes of education? Is the use, I mean, there's so many exceptions there as well. And fundamentally, maybe what the law is going to need to do is start thinking about like, what is the essential character of an artwork? Is it the specific expression of that art, or is it whatever parameters of that art an AI algorithm learns from, that get built into whatever mathematical algorithm it uses to create its own art? Is that part of the artwork? Is that part of the specific expression of the artwork? And is that something that we protect then under copyright, same as anything else? Like I don't know. It's all very interesting. So
interesting. Yeah. Interesting. I'm just like, I never want to hear the words fair use again. Oh, it's like having to deal with that. Like even now in government, we do have to deal with that still. So it's it's so murky all the time. So anyway,
it is, and it's funny because there are some things that people talk about, like again, Laura, I don't mean to keep pulling you out, Laura, but you have so many good comments that you come up with. But they talk about assignments, using AI to write an assignment. Does a student deserve an A if they use AI to write their assignment? And for me, I didn't even have to think about that. For me, that was like a straight up no. Because how is that in any way proof that student has understood the work? Which is the whole point of an assignment, is for a student to prove that they understand the work. And I think there are some things like that where, for me personally, the answer is really straightforward. And there are other areas where the answers are less straightforward. And that's where I have this issue. I don't I really don't feel strongly one way or the other, but not because I'm like meh about it, but more because it's so complicated.
It is. It's very multi-layered. And Laura's taking me back to my teaching days, and I feel like this whole live is triggering for me. So because I had to deal with that too. You know, it comes back to like, okay, what is, just, yeah, oh my gosh, students writing, plagiarizing, students plagiarizing essays. But now we're at this point where it's like, oh, AI, students are using AI to write essays. Is it? I mean, I don't know. It feels like it's escalating to this thing where it's like, yeah, I don't know. It was not fun for me back in the day when it was just more black and white of like, did you plagiarize this? Yes, you did. I can from this thing right here. Anyway.
Yeah. And there's some interesting discussion here going on as well. Like Inky Sword pointed out, and I know somebody else had a little further up the thread, but there's so much discussion that we're having a hard time keeping up. But yeah, I mean, it is true that a lot of artists have sort of wholesale adopted the use of AI as a way to just, like you're saying here, making reference images so that they can use that to create additional art down the road, and so, but like you're saying, the programmers supplying the images don't care about making art easier and healthier for artists or respecting artists. And that, I think, is the key point, right? Because that again is where the societal context comes in. Again, it's like, what's the intention behind this art program? Even if artists can make use of this program, is the program ultimately going to be bad for artists and for their livelihoods and for their abilities to make a living doing creative work? And that I think really is where technology, as it always does, has completely outpaced the ethical discussion around what the technology is able to do and making decisions as a society about whether or not that's actually okay. So yeah.
We've all gone quiet because we're all reading.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at comments. No worries, Laura. I'm just joking, and also feel bad for all the professors out there who have to deal with this.
There's a whole new level of stuff.
It's ridiculous.
And how would you know? There are programs that you can put work in that can tell you if that work has been plagiarized. Yes. It can give you a percentage of likelihood. Yes. How would you be able to do that with AI?
Exactly.
How do you know whether it's been written by AI or not?
Yeah. And this is so fascinating because, Laura, we've got Laura talking about, using a particular program to create schoolwork that, without any effort or without any demonstration of understanding or that it's plagiarism. But then, of course, we have Meg pointing out that there are artistic people who are making use of some of these programs to figure out how to respond in certain social situations. Like, I think it's so interesting how, again, like, it's so highly context dependent, and it's really is. I mean, it's just this ethical question of being able to say, okay, so AI exists and there are uses of it that are good for society and uses of it that are bad for society. Right. And it's going to be a complicated question we all have to have in order to, actually determine what's going to be okay to use. Right. So yeah, we've got,
I don't think no, I don't either. Actually,
I don't either. I have to say, I don't either.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's already, of course, it will ultimately be bad for artists. AI art will become more and more easier and faster to produce in capitalism. Not actual artists will benefit most. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mixed just Ray. I think AI will become another art style. Yeah. I think that's interesting. I think it's interesting because I think, AI art is something that can probably end up producing in a lot of different styles. And I think that's kind of part of the concern, is that what it ultimately is replicating in a lot of ways is a style. It's not replicating specific expressions of artwork, but it's replicating a particular person's style. And that's where Candy was pointing out further up thread that, like, style is hard, if not impossible, to copyright, which is absolutely true. Like style is not something that's protected under copyright. Again, copyright is for a specific expression of a specific artwork. That is what is protected, which again is why I think that the lawsuit is not going to be successful ultimately. But but yeah, it's I don't know.
Well, I mean, and I think what Mixtress Ray's comment reminds me of is that, I have seen some AI decks floating around, and I will say, and and I think it's because of maybe the newness of some of these programs that these artists are now using, that these creators are now using, they do seem samey, and of course now the more data that's input into those programs, it'll branch out. But as it is now, it almost just, I have seen decks where it's like, okay, wait, that kind of looks AI to me, like just seeing what certain apps, the kind of styles that they tend to rely on as of now. I think there was one way back, and not way back, but there was one that I was playing around with a little bit, and it just produced the same kind of look in a sense, no matter what kind of prompts you put in there. So, and yeah, that'll likely progress to branch out to all different types of styles, which is essentially the issue.
Yeah. So there's a whole side conversation going on about how these AI art engines are trained, and I think it's important to note that to make sure that we draw the distinction between the difference between like public domain and like what exists out on the internet. So public domain is a specific legal term for certain things that are out of copyright because they've existed for a really long time. So like Sherlock Holmes, for example, is now out of copyright because it's been a certain amount of time since the author died. And anybody can write a Sherlock Holmes story now because it is all considered in public domain and there's no copyright violation due to the amount of time that's passed. AI art engines are, and most of them, including Midjourney, have admitted that they are training their engines using just art that's out there in the public.
Exactly.
Art that's on social media. This is all still copyrighted stuff, but it's stuff that artists have put on the internet. And these engines are going out and scraping all of this artwork, whether it's on Instagram or DeviantArt or wherever, still copyrighted, but the engine is using that artwork to train itself on how to create artwork. That said, again, it's the head of Midjourney has said, once it's trained, once our algorithm is trained, we're not like keeping copies of any of that artwork. Like it's not stored in a big library or anything. Like it trains our algorithm just like a human looking at that artwork on the internet learns from it and might create their own art based on it. So again, that's where it becomes real fuzzy on the whole question of copyright, because they're not really replicating that exact piece of artwork. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm talking so much.
No, it's okay. Okay. We need a lawyer. We need a lawyer here. This topic.
Yeah. So it's artwork that's out there in the public, but it is still copyrighted artwork that it is being learned from. But the way that it's learning from it is something that under current definitions is potentially still not a copyright violation. So anyway,
yeah.
So here's a question, because I don't know the answer. When you post work on Instagram or Facebook or somewhere like that, because I never read the terms of these social media sites because I'm shocking, does it belong to you still, or is there something in the terms of Instagram that says once it's on Instagram, it belongs to Instagram?
Yeah, again, that is totally dependent on the terms of the individual social media platform. A lot of folks here are saying that I'm not actually positive on this specifically relating to Instagram. There's folks saying that the terms of Instagram are that your work legally belongs to Instagram once you put it on Instagram. So again, it's a little more complex than just saying that it belongs to Instagram. Typically what happens is that the terms of use for something like Instagram would say that Instagram, it's still copyright to you because you're the creator. Like if you create a piece of artwork, you own copyright in that artwork, but the terms of use of Instagram would say that like Instagram has its own like permanent eternal license to then replicate that artwork or do whatever the heck that they want with that artwork for forever. So it's not really saying that you don't have copyright in that artwork once it's on Instagram, but the act of putting it on Instagram grants them a license to do certain things with it that normally they wouldn't have the ability to do. So,
Okay.
So for what that's worth. So sorry, just
no,
you know, we're all like there's so
some old horsemen.
Yeah, what Lisa says is correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
You retain your copyright, but yeah, you're giving them a license. Basically.
Yeah, permission to use it technically.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's reading Inky Sword Tarot. They're saying that, you know, from an industry point of view, you're expected to put your work on social media as your portfolio, but then you have this risk of it being able to do whatever they want with it. I imagine for an artist, that's incredibly frustrating. Is probably not even a word, but
yeah, absolutely. And again, this, you know, this is one of those things that is governed by the terms of you know, whatever social media platform you're using. So you know, copyright law itself is not necessarily the thing that's governing this. It's whatever I accept you click that you didn't read when you sign up for the social media platform. That is, you know, that's what is governing all of this. So
yeah.
Wow, this is such a good discussion.
It is.
Sorry, you guys are so smart. We're just like reading along here.
We're just bouncing off everything that's in the comments. It's like somebody posted something. I want to talk about that now.
This is interesting. Yeah, a lot of art directors are against AI. Yeah, I mean, people faking entire campaigns through theft of it. That is absolutely true. And that,
oh my gosh,
and that raises a whole other question, which is like, because of the internet, theft and true copyright violation where the person doesn't have a license to the artwork but uses it anyway is so easy that and especially when you're talking about in other countries. I mean, this is why we see people's art getting ripped off in China all the time, because there just really isn't good legal recourse to take against you know, stuff that's being replicated without permission. You know, if it's the same tarot decks, you know, popping up all over you know, Wish or whatever, that are just total ripoffs without permission. And it's almost impossible to combat all of that these days. So yeah.
To segue a bit into sort of AI tarot decks and stuff. So one of the interesting things that people often say, and I agree with, is if you don't like AI art, don't buy AI tarot decks. Right? Which seems like a fairly straightforward argument. But how do you know whether the deck that you're buying or not is AI? I think that's a concern for me, because people don't like you and I think it would be nice if people with every tarot deck that they made ever talked about their whatever the word, their medium, or you know, whatever, but they don't, and there's nothing to say that they have to. So there's nothing to stop somebody from putting a deck on Kickstarter and it being an AI deck and you not knowing that.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you were relying on the creators to be transparent about the, you know, the mediums that they use, the, you know, digital platforms that they used, etc. Like for instance, you know, just taking my own decks as examples, like, so I don't draw, right? But what I did was, like, I would either use public domain vector art, or I would buy under terms of, you know, knowing my terms of use, buy certain vector art pieces, essentially collage them together, or like manipulate them, amend colors, take out certain elements, whatever, to make the deck, the final images I made, right? And I make that very transparent in my descriptions. I make playing cards like, I didn't draw all this. This is like vector art, etc. But I mean, this is the type of thing where it's like, this is just one of many examples where it's like, it leads to, unless, you know, I had to be very careful about what am I agreeing to in terms of conditions, buying this piece of vector art to then, and what am I allowed to do in terms of amending that? Am I allowed to like amend it and change it or whatever? Can I then use it for commercial reasons, etc.? Like all of these things are, as a deck creator, you would hope people would be responsible enough to do the research and be paranoid enough about legal ramifications, and also just like ethically, like, okay, I don't want to be an asshole, so I'm going to do this ethically. But at the end of the day, I don't think that just as many creators are transparent about that. I don't think there are just as many creators that aren't transparent about that at all, and will say that something, that I've seen it on Etsy. Oh no, this was hand drawn. No, that shit ain't hand drawn. Like that's not hand drawn. And so there are products that that, but then there are products that are so convincing. Like, how would you know? And, it's scary to think that, like, yeah, we don't know what we're buying a lot of times, especially with tarot decks. I mean, the was it Advent? How do you say that tarot deck name?
Oh, the Alvdansen Tarot.
Yes, that was created through Midjourney, right?
Yes, I
believe, and that's a beautiful deck. And I know that a lot of people have it and love it, and and I don't. And also, I don't know all the specifics about how it was created and what pieces from where, and how much of that really looks like the original art pieces from whatever data they took it from. Like, it's hard to know those things. I don't know. I'm just like, I'm just babbling.
Well, and it is interesting. I mean, I know that the creators of the Alvdansen Tarot, talked a lot about the process that they used in terms of working with the AI engine, and the many iterations of refinement that they went through for each of the cards to ensure that they got a really good piece of artwork. And I have to admit, I was very tempted,
as was I,
by the Alvdansen Tarot, specifically because I really liked the artwork. Then the creator of Midjourney came out and basically admitted that yes, they had scraped millions and millions and millions of artworks from the internet to train its engine without getting permission or consent from any of those people. And then Midjourney was sued by a number of artists, and some of the named plaintiffs in the class action are artists that I really like and support. So that's when I was like, okay, I think that I got to take the Alvdansen Tarot off my wish list, because I have now a lot of concerns about the way that the engine was created that was used to create this tarot deck. So, but it's not to say that, like, again, AI art was used to create artwork that I thought was very very beautiful and very well done, and very suggestive of a lot of meaning, and clearly had a lot of art or thought and work put into creating it, even though it was created by AI. So yeah.
And that was unbeknownst to the creator, right? At that time that they were using it to create the deck, they didn't know that it was essentially data pilfered from, just without any permission or whatnot. So, and again, I think it comes back to the idea that there is thought put into these creations. Like, there are creators out there who can, do use AI in a thoughtful, ethical, way. And it's not just like throwing words into a program and outcomes. I mean, some of the decks are, but with the Alvdansen, it definitely seemed like there was a lot of work and effort put into it, thought. So yeah. Not to knowingly. So early ritual saying, as it stands, I now choose not to knowingly buy an AI deck, much like I choose to not buy from Hobby Lobby, Chick-fil-A, etc.
Yeah. No, and I think that ultimately we can all vote with our pocketbooks. I mean, I think that is definitely something that is important and true, and it's it doesn't always get us places, as we found with even the tarot community. I think at large has had really strong objections to some of the things that, for example, the mass market tarot publishers do. And even if that makes a lot of noise and what it seems like our community, somehow it doesn't always seem to have much of an impact. But and again, that goes back to the perverse incentives of capitalism. But yeah. and yeah,
I mean, and I think there is
from Hobby Lobby or Chick-fil-A.
We're talking about, like when we're going back to some of the other comments, there were comments about how AI will be used to create tarot in such a way that is a massive cash grab, and it will just be, people will just be churning out these tarot decks that they've created on AI, and it will saturate the market and blah blah. But isn't all of that happening already?
Mm-hmm.
It's
and I'm not talking about AI. I'm talking about
just in general, right?
Taking AI out of the conversation. That's already happening.
It's already happening, yeah. And we're seeing, and we're also seeing, I think, pushback to that happening. I mean, I'm seeing discussions where people are like, okay, I'm sick of this. Like, it's evident what's going on here, that these are like cash grabs. There's no thought put into this. And I think, especially in tarot and, the types of people who tend to be interested, in terms of using it as a practice, et cetera, those things are important, to think about. And I think there are a lot of us who, choose not to play into that as much as we can. Like I think about a lot of those insight edition decks, that have become like the quick, like, let's dip into the popularity of like pop culture and nothing against those decks. I know that they got the legal permissions and all that good stuff, but if we're just talking in terms of the cash grabs, capital, it's, people are already like, and I'm over it, So I don't know. I feel, I dare to say I feel kind of optimistic that AI will not take over the world in terms of art. I think that we by nature are like, we're nostalgic creatures. So we're always going to want to be hearkening back to the time when we used fountain pens and paper, and collage, and, just those types of more traditional, shall we say, mediums. I don't think, we still do photography, we still journal, we still do hand drawing, we still do all these things that people were afraid would die even years ago, when digital became more of the thing, digital journaling and digital art. No, well, people still do photography, and people.
I mean, it's not the same thing, but we had very similar conversations about ebooks when ebooks.
Yes.
And people said people would stop buying paper books, and actually the opposite is true. And the percentage, especially, I mean, in the UK, I don't know about the States because I don't live there, but I know in the UK we are consistently seeing a higher percentage of physical books being sold every year over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
The opposite is happening. People are so fed up in some respects of technology that they are hearkening back to it. Like, I love my Kindle, but sometimes I really just want to hold a book. You can't beat the smell and the feel and the just everything that comes with owning an actual book.
Exactly. And there's that sense of, for people who, like to create through those more traditional mediums, it's going to be more fulfilling. And, then for people who buy those products, people who want to support those artists, people who want to support those small businesses. I mean, that's already discussion that we have time and time again in this arena of tarot's, support and, just which items and products of supporting small businesses like Sarah's, Sunset Bow Boutique, which and so, it's just, I think that, I'm optimistic that there will be enough of that, kind of nostalgia and just wanting to keep, traditions alive and to keep some of that old school stuff like still going. I think there's always going to be a yearning for that. That AI will not be able to touch.
Yeah. I do. There has been a really interesting side conversation going on about just the sort of like, it's absolutely true that for, since the Industrial Revolution, there has been an ongoing trend of technology taking over more and more roles from humans, whether it be, working in factories, whether, everything for the grocery self-checkout line, everything now up until AI art. And obviously, yeah, there is definitely like a classist element to that, in that, all of a sudden a lot of people care about AI art who didn't really maybe care about robots taking over in auto factories because of the different social standing and cachet of certain classes of laborers. So, and that's really, really important to take note of. Like, none of this is actually new.
Right.
There is historically been this this ongoing trend of certain types of human labor being taken over by technology. And again, I think that that just gets at this whole sort of societal question of like, it's a much bigger question about what kind of society do we want to live in? Like, how do we make sure of everybody's physical well-being and their ability to support themselves or be supported, to eat and have a roof over their heads, and ensure that people are able to spend their time on the things that are fulfilling to them, as opposed to just having to be like working for a big corporation and selling your body to do things that don't actually like fulfill you or help you enjoy your life. It's I don't know. I just just talked myself into a like much bigger topic that I don't have the mental energy to get into. So but yeah, it's technology, this is just the latest in a long ongoing conversation. And I do think it's really important to remember that not only is this not new, but this has negatively affected people for 100 years and more. And we haven't always cared as much as somehow we all now do about this, and that's not that's not a cool thing. So yeah,
so true. That's a fantastic point.
Yeah. So anyway,
it's delivered to technology.
Exactly. Well, and it's funny too, because there historically there has always been this sort of utopian idea that we can just someday we'll all be like living like the Jetsons, and we'll have house cleaning robots and hair doing robots and dishwashing robots and all of those kinds of things. And our time will be freed up for like whatever pursuits we want to engage in. And it's very funny how in a lot of ways that hasn't actually happened, because again, the economic incentives driving the development of that technology are not always economic incentives to actually make people's lives better. Like that's not the way capitalism works necessarily. So which in a lot of ways is kind of a shame, but I think that really kind of tells us how much we as humans need to be putting our voices behind these uses of technology and trying to push technology in ways that actually benefit humanity, as opposed to negatively affect humanity. So yeah. Yeah. Sorry, there's so much.
No,
there's so much good
I'm
stuff.
just like, woo, I'm spent.
Video killed the radio star. Anyway, well, ladies,
how
are we doing? What have we missed? Are there topics that we haven't gotten to?
We covered it, I think we covered it all. The lawyer talk and the pros and the cons and I'm glad that you were able to. I think that was very, very beneficial for those of us who are not as in the know about what is copyright infringement, what is intellectual property, where's the gray area. It's important. So
well, and I guess my big concern about the lawsuit is I worry there is just generally an over-reliance in this assumption. I mean, obviously not everybody makes this assumption, because a lot of people are well aware that the legal system is not built to benefit humanity in many ways at all. But I just don't want people to think that like, oh, this lawsuit by artists against Midjourney is going to solve this problem, because it's not gonna. Like, I'm sorry, the legal system is not built to protect artists, and it's not gonna help probably. So we just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. So
And I agree with that, Rochelle. I do think technology has good points, it has bad points. I think
Yeah.
Personally, I think the same is true in this conversation as it is in numerous other conversations. It's
Absolutely.
And when it comes to ethics, I think personally, this is just my personal view, is that ethics is a personal thing. You have to figure out where your line in the sand is, what your ethics are, and you have to make your decisions based on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, AI is a tool like any other tool out there. You know, it's neutral, but then it's what it's fed into and what it's used for, right? What's fed into it, how it's used. I mean, that's where it gets so freaking complicated. But AI in itself, I mean, again, we use it all the time, not even knowing that we do. So it's nothing new. It's nothing new at all.
Yeah.
So.
And let's just be glad that so far it hasn't become self-aware yet, so that we don't need to start having the discussion of so many science fiction novels around like
Terminator and
humanity and like what constitutes a living being and like what constitutes intelligence and because because boy, if you read even a couple of science fiction novels about that kind of thing, your head will spin, guys. So
Sarah Connors.
Seriously, Skynet, like let's not get there. So anyway,
and I also think, Lisa, that's a really good point. Like the AI stuff is out there now. It's out there. It's not going back in the box. That's the reality. Is this stuff is not going back in the box.
It's not exactly.
So all that can happen moving forward is what we now do with that. How do we regulate it? How do we make sure that it's being used in a way that is fair and ethical and isn't affecting people at the very bottom of the ladder, because they're the ones who nobody ever talks about. You know, how do we do all of those things now? This thing is out of the box because it ain't going back.
And I don't personally want it to necessarily go back. You know, I think there's been a lot of beneficial, you know, things that have come out of, I'm just talking generally, that have come out of AI. So it really does come down to ethics. That's, I mean, that's what it comes down to. So yeah. And then, when it comes to decks, I mean, that is, again, that's gonna have to be like an individual decision. You have to decide where you stand on that and let that guide you. So
and this is also really fair too. Ethics and decision making in tech isn't neutral. I mean, tech definitely isn't neutral, and that's like the most important thing that I think that we need to keep in mind about technology, is that technology is created by humans within a context. Nothing about it is just a neutral tool, and you know, like all of the biases and the issues that humans are bringing to every aspect of their lives are also being brought to the technology that they build, and that is something that is incredibly important to keep in mind. So
that's true.
Anyway, and I think that is a really good note to end on. So are we
happy?
Happy? Everybody good? So
good.
All right, cool. Well, thank you all for joining us in this very rambling discussion that went totally like off track from where we had intended it for it to go. But I think that it was really, really good, a good discussion for everybody to have, and really interesting. And thank you all so much for participating in the comments and being so engaged. Like, it was really great to have so much engaged discussion. Like, it was awesome. You guys were all making incredible points and bringing like fantastic points of view to this. So that was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was laughing at Laura. She was like, I can see its little tail. She's crazy.
We can all agree on this. We love pets. So
it's Luna. She's like, okay, look, notice me now, please.
So our next Three Girls One Deck is February 11th on Julie's channel. So watch out for that. And yeah, this was such a fantastic discussion. You guys, thank you so much. Another great point here. Support artists' work with your money. Yes.
Yes.
Also important.
Yes.
So fantastic. All right. Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Thank
And
you, guys.
yeah, we'll see you for the next one.
Bye.
Bye.